Are we living our dreams through our children? Or are we letting them live their dreams? You can push them only so far, but the thing is, it's their participation, it's not yours. Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of five, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. of Dad Central and a cleaner shaven than in the past co-host.
Drew Solon, Dad Central.
Good stuff. So today on the Dad Central podcast, we're going to be talking about navigating sports and extracurricular pressure, supporting our kids without pushing too hard. And today we're going to chat about, helping dads find a balance between encouragement and pressure when it comes to their kids' involvement in sports and extracurricular activities. The three key takeaways we're going to chat about today are pressure versus support, how to tell the difference. Next up, we're going to be chatting about strategies for balanced involvement. And then finally, real talk for fathers. So Drew, I wanted you to chat about this topic today because I know you've got your son playing a lot of baseball. So before we get into the three takeaways, what are your thoughts on this subject?
I think it's a challenging one. I just came this from a past weekend where Jordan's rep baseball team had 4 games in 2 days. And then at the same time, a good friend of mine, his son, both of his sons had football games. One was a playoff game, one was just a sort of regular game. And they were actually at the same park that Jordan was playing. So I got to do double duty, watch Jordan play, but then also hang out with a good friend of mine and watch his son play, which he and I were talking, and his son got pulled out of the game, and he had some critical comments for the coaching staff and the things that he'd been observing throughout the season. Which I could fully relate to and understand. It's definitely challenging. We both played sports growing up. We both played at a pretty high level. We didn't necessarily make it professionally. Actually, Paul did play a little professional in Europe, but so we have great quality coaching. We have good understanding of athlete development, and of course, we're also kind of A-type personalities, and so I'm sure we're not the only dads out there that are like that. So yeah, relevant topic. Certainly going through it. I mean, my daughters are also in horseback riding, and Michaela is becoming competitive this year, and so she's going to horse riding shows. Now, of course, I'm a little bit more out of my knowledge area when it comes to horseback riding, but what I do observe is that her coach is excellent. Anyways, wanting to support all of my kids in whatever their activities they're doing, and so I would imagine a lot of dads might have those similar desires as well.
Good stuff. So just want to remind everybody, and even if you're brand new, just want to tell you, you are watching or listening to Dad Central, parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And can't forget that our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So before we get really deep into this, why this topic is important: the increased involvement of organized sports and extracurriculars. It can provide an emotional toll on parents and kids when pressure creeps in competitive sports, and what dads struggle with: wanting the best, but unintentionally sometimes pushing too hard. So the first thing we want to talk about, or have Drew share about, is pressure versus support. How to tell the difference.
Yeah, and I love talking about this. I also want to reflect back on our previous show with Mike Matheny, and he wrote a book called The Dad Coach. And it's very relevant. Some of the principles he talked about, I think, are interesting. Mike Matheny was a former professional baseball player, played in the major leagues for, I think, 16 seasons. And so, he has a great way of describing, those parents who are, really love their children and are really gung ho and want to advocate, but I won't do it justice, but he basically said, these are the parents who are a little bit too much, though. But it's all coming from a place of love and desire, and wanting to see the kids succeed. So to get to the topic, though, what we're saying is, how do you identify the difference between pressure versus support? And so really, that's going to be, you have to pay attention to your child and see how are they reacting or responding to what's going on. Some kids, they might thrive under a high volume, high intensity, and really like enjoy and love that. Jordan, he's got a lot more baseball this year. He's got practice every week. He's got multiple games every weekend, and he still in between wants to throw the ball around. In fact, he just can't get enough of it. So, I'd say that's a good sign. But if he was getting, "Ah, I don't really feel like going to practice that, or I'm not so sure, he's losing some interest. There may be elements of pressure, and the pressure may not be directly related to the sport, but really, you got to understand the signs that your children are showing you. And then also thinking about yourself. Are you often getting anxious or stressed or worried or agitated? And it's often coming out in, interacting with your kids or interacting with your partner or interacting even with the coaches. you know, Maybe there's a little bit too much going on there. So again, signs in your child, signs in yourself, and then we've got this little comment here. We'd like you to do the mirror test, and this is a simple question of: Are you really invested in the goals that your children have, or helping them develop for themselves and supporting their goals, or are you really focusing on some of the unmet goals that you never met and you think you can have it achieved through your children? So these are some, I think, important elements to consider when it comes to: are you providing valuable support, or are you putting sometimes pressure on your child? What are your thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, I think, and it's when it comes to parenting in general, sometimes we have to say, are we living our dreams through our children? Or are we letting them live their dreams? And I know I've helped another number of fathers who've called me and say, "Hey, my son or my daughter doesn't want to play this sport anymore, but I know they're really good in it." And I have to say, you know what? You can push them only so far, but the thing is, it's their participation, it's not yours. And I'm sure you've spoken with fathers who have had, got that sense that they're living their unsuccessful sports dreams through their children, and it can get to be a very fine line. What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, as you share that, I reflect on Jordan, who is now 9. I saw his interest in sports, from pretty early age. Not that we were inundated with a lot of sports, and of course we had COVID in the mix, which kind of threw a monkey wrench into a lot of it. But I remember asking him a little over a year ago about football, and there was a flag football league that had come and grown here in the area, and I thought, I think Jordan would really like that. And I put the idea to him. I said, "Hey, would you consider playing, flag football?" And he really wasn't into it at all. And so I asked maybe one more time, and I could see he was really hesitant. At that age, what I was noticing is he was a little bit nervous about doing any type of new activity. So I thought, well, maybe that's just what it is. It's new. He hasn't played it much. Lo and behold, a couple things have happened since then. So, one, he became good friends in grade 4 with two or three other boys who really love sports. Well, one loved soccer, another one loved football, and he's been playing both of them a lot at school on his own. The other thing is we watched a fair amount of NFL this year. We had moved. We got so in the new house, it was just really conducive to kind of hanging out all together as a family, more so than the other house. And football happened to be on because it was just a nice break. And he really got into it. And then we watched the Super Bowl. He was like a huge Eagles fan, and now since the Eagles won, football is a huge deal to him. Long story short, he's actually mad at me that we didn't get him signed up for flag football this spring. And he is literally chomping at the bit to play tackle football this fall. Uh, I mean, I haven't pushed him at all. I haven't said one thing to him. I haven't, in fact, he was the one who came to me. And so it was just, I guess I share the story more to say that, I mean, obviously, I played football and I enjoyed the sport. I love watching it. But it was really Jordan who dictated and drove his and wanting to be involved. And I felt like I feel like that's better and healthier than if I were to be the one, hey, like you really should be doing it. Don't get me wrong. I think as a parent, you have the foresight and knowledge to understand like your children, could benefit from this. And while they may be resistant, I actually think this is a healthy choice for their overall. You can make that determination based on your family, but I felt for Jordan at the time, having really no more conversation about it, it's really just evolved on its own. And so I felt like that's worked well for him. And that goes back to this idea of knowing your child and understanding what their needs are. I have a different approach with Sophia. Sophia is very hesitant and very much like, she won't do it. She literally won't. And you have to push her. You have to put her in things and you have to literally make her go there. And then she will resist you like all the way. But then when she goes, next thing you know, it's like it becomes like her favorite activity. But she would never get there on her own. So you just have to know your child and be able to adjust your response to them. That's my, I guess, end of the road takeaway, and eliminating the idea of pressure and just helping support your child as they grow and develop.
Nice. Let's move into our next part of the conversation, second part, strategies for balanced involvement. How do you navigate balanced involvement when it comes to your kids in sports?
Yeah, well, the question might be, well, what does balanced involvement even mean? And I guess that's, you know, teetering between support and pressure. Both actually can be valuable if applied at the right time based on your child's needs. So to build off of that theme, understanding what your children actually enjoy most. And I've asked my daughters this a lot about horseback riding, mostly because I don't fully understand it. But I'm like, so what do you enjoy most about horseback riding? Right. And they're like, oh, we just love it. I'm like, that's great that you love it. Tell me a little bit more. What is it? Is it about learning about the horses? Is it about caring for the animal? Is it about just the act of having to learn how to control and the different techniques needed to manage the horse? And is it the risk involved? Because it's kind of scary when, like, the horse gets moved. What is it? Right. So I think the takeaway here is asking your children about what do they enjoy most about the activity, and then helping encourage and support, or even remind sometimes when they get discouraged or saying, I don't want to do this anymore. Remember, you talked about this as something that you love the most. You know, how would it feel if you didn't have that on a regular basis anymore? Or how would it feel if you actually did this more? So Jordan had to go from select last year, which was mostly house league with a few odd games at a higher level, to this year rep. And rep is a significantly higher level of commitment. And asking him, so what would it be like for you to do more of these weekends where you have multiple games? Would that be enjoyable for you, or would that be too much? And he's like, no, I'd love it, Dad. I want to do more of it. So I think that's you know engaging your children in conversation, and this idea of emphasizing their effort and their growth and their contributions over necessary performance, which we haven't got much into this, but I think those are two quick thoughts. What about you, Ed?
Yeah, jumping in you with this, and I said in the previous point, let the kids take the lead. Allow room for failure and decision making. So again, the best way they're going to learn is either succeeding or not succeeding. And encourage, take breaks and for unstructured time. Like it sounds like Drew has quite the pace with his son going on right now, wanting to be involved in all these different sports, but also just encouraging that there's some break time and partnering if possible with coaches and instructors rather than as he said at the beginning with his friend managing from the sidelines, and nothing wrong with managing the sidelines, but good opportunity if you can develop a relationship with a coach or the instructor to smooth out those potential challenging times, so like the relationship. Drew, before we move on to the third point, anything you're wanting to add to that?
Yeah, two quick things. I was at the games this past weekend with Jordan, and I could see he was doing some things that were not ideal. Fundamentals is important. I came to him in the middle of the game and I said, "Hey, Jordan, hey, doing great. I really appreciate it. Can I say one thing to you?" And instantly his body language changed, and I could tell he was not up for receiving what I had to say to him. So I said, "You don't really want to hear this, do you?" He's like, "No, I don't." I was like, "Okay, no problem. Hey, just go back, enjoy, have a great rest of your game, etc." So this is where he's not open to receiving certain pieces of feedback from me, but he's probably open to receiving it from his coaches. So the ability to partner with coaches to say, "Hey, I'm not sure if you're aware or you recognize it, but here are some things technique wise I think he could really benefit. He doesn't seem to receive it from you. Would you be willing to, just give him this one key pointer at a point in time when you know that he's open to receive it?" To me, that they're like your best advocates. I mean, the other anyway, so I'll just share with that brief story. So definitely real, definitely challenging, but definitely important, I'd say. Partnering with coaches where you can is much more preferable than, kind of the alternative, I'd say.
Good stuff. And our final of the three today, real talk for fathers. So, Drew, I know you always do it, but what's some real talk for fathers when we're talking about this subject?
I mean, for me, you could ask yourself the question, are your expectations realistic for your child? And are they really focused on your child's best interest? Or are they focused somewhere else? Are you feeling pressure? Are you feeling a sense of my kid's got to succeed? Are you feeling a sense of, your child has to accomplish certain things in order for you to feel like you've been a good parent? I mean, I think you got to be real. Like, do you have some of those things that are driving your decision making here? I think, your own experience with your own parents or influential adults as you're growing up probably plays a big factor in how you're showing up for your kids right now. So the only question I would be is, are you showing up for them the way that you wish somebody showed up for you? And if you're catching yourself not doing that, then maybe reflect on those growing up experiences and say, what would have been better for me, at least at that time? And then think about, is my child similar to me or is my child a little bit different and they might need a different approach? So those are my quick thoughts. How about you, Ed?
Yeah, I'll just add on to that too. A quick dad tip: always ask before you advise. Always ask before you advise. So, hey, that is our three tips today. I just want to go over what we talked about. We first talked about pressure versus support, how to tell the difference. Then we talked about, or Drew did all the talking today, strategies for balance and involvement. And then finally, we gave a little real talk for fathers. Three quick additional takeaways: support doesn't mean control. Let your child lead the journey. Then second point here we have is check in emotionally. It's not just about performance. And then finally, presence lead versus pressure. Your calm presence is the greatest support. So Drew, any final thoughts, and what's a call to action or a resource we can suggest for our listeners and followers?
Yeah. Final thought is I view this as a more of a collaborative journey that it's like when you're doing unstructured play with your child. You could jump in there and be like, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." But is it the appropriate time to do that? Meaning that when it comes to sports, I think parents, have an important role. And yes, we want their children's responses to really lead the most beneficial for everyone involved, and obviously collaborative with our partners as well, so that you're working together. So that'd be just my one comment there. And in terms of resources for us, we think that it's kind of like catching your kids doing something good. The more you focus on the good, the strengths, as opposed to necessarily the critical or the correcting, kids tend to do better. And so we've got a resource called the 21 positive phrases dads can say to their kids. And I feel like applying this, especially in the sports or extracurriculars context, is probably the most valuable thing you can do is take one of these positive phrases and after every performance or even before the performances, let your children know how much you care about them and how much they mean to you and how much perform it's not about the performance, it's just about watching them do something that they're skilled or love to do, and that gives us satisfaction as parents. I think that's probably a great resource for dads. 21 positive phrases you can say to your kids, use it as often as you can around their extracurriculars and their sports activities.
Fantastic. So I'll just add a quote for the episode: a child's self-worth should never depend on a scoreboard. So as we wrap it up, we want to say thank you so much for taking the most important thing, your time, to tune into the show. And as always, we like to say, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And thanks for listening, and see you soon.